I've always liked being alone. It fits my work as a wildlife biologist, just me, my gear, and the wild, quiet places. I'm used to sleeping in snow caves, listening to distant wolf howls, feeling completely at home in the silence. But nothing prepared me for the kind of quiet I found in that old building, a silence that felt like it was alive and watching me. The wind outside was howling like someone was screaming. I pushed open the big wooden door, and it creaked so loudly it felt like a warning. Cold, damp air hit my face right away. It smelled like mold and something else, something old and heavy. My boots crunched on the cracked tile floor, each step echoing too loudly in the dark hallway. Dust hung in the beam of my flashlight, swirling like tiny ghosts. Far away, I could hear the pipes knocking and water dripping somewhere deep inside. The place seemed to breathe in slow, heavy sighs. I felt like I was being watched from the shadows. I stopped for a moment, my breath showing white in the cold air. My heart was beating faster, but I forced myself to keep going. The wallpaper was peeling off in big strips, showing rotted wood behind it. Water stains had made weird shapes on the walls, some looked like faces, crying or laughing. I touched one of the stains, just to see if it was real, and the wall felt warm, almost like skin. I jumped back, shivers crawling down my spine. I kept walking until I reached a hallway lined with old doors. The numbers on them were almost worn away, like the building had forgotten who used to live there. At the very end was a door that was slightly open, apartment 3B. The darkness behind it was deeper than the rest of the hall. I felt sure that if I stepped inside, I'd be stepping into another world. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The smell inside was sharp and cold, like rust and wet earth. My flashlight shook in my hand as I walked in. The room was empty, but it felt like it was holding its breath. I whispered, "Hello." My voice sounded too thin and weak, swallowed by the silence. From the shadows, I thought I heard a soft reply, "Hello," but it was so quiet I wasn't sure. I stepped further in. The floor creaked under me. The walls were covered in faded wallpaper, the pattern so old it was almost gone. In one corner, a mirror hung crookedly. It was so dirty I could barely see my own reflection. But as I got closer, I thought I saw something moving in the mirror, not me, but something else. A shadow in the doorway behind me. I turned around fast, but the room was empty. Just the cold air, the cracked window, and the sound of the wind. When I looked back at the mirror, for a moment I saw a face that wasn't mine. It was pale, with hollow eyes and an open mouth like it was trying to scream. Then it was gone, and I was staring at my own scared face. My breath was ragged, my flashlight bouncing across the walls. I wanted to run, to get out of there, but my legs wouldn't move. I felt frozen, caught in the stare of something I couldn't see. Outside, the wind rattled the windows like bones knocking together. The air in the room felt thick, pushing down on me, and I knew in that moment that I wasn't just a visitor here anymore. The building had seen me, it knew me, and I didn't think it was ever going to let me go. I took a step back from the mirror, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. My hands were shaking, and I wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans, trying to calm down. I told myself it was just my imagination, just a trick of the light. But in my gut, I knew something was different about this place, something that didn't belong in the real world. I turned my flashlight around the room, trying to see if there was anything else hiding in the shadows. The beam caught on an old wooden chair in the corner, half broken with one leg missing. Next to it was a small table covered in dust. I could see old papers scattered across it, yellowed and curling at the edges. I picked one up, but the writing was faded, the letters smeared and almost impossible to read. It looked like a list of names, but most of them were crossed out in dark ink. My skin prickled as I read the last name on the list. It was mine. I dropped the paper like it had burned me, backing away so fast I nearly tripped over the chair. My mind was racing. How could my name be there? I had never been to this place before, never even heard of it. But there it was, written in the same dark ink as all the others. My breathing was fast and shallow, the air in the room suddenly feeling too thin. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. Maybe it was someone else with the same name, or maybe I was reading it wrong. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I felt like I had stepped into a story that was already being written, and now I was part of it whether I wanted to be or not. I turned back to the hallway, but the door to the apartment was closed. I didn't remember shutting it. My hands were clammy as I reached for the doorknob, twisting it slowly. The door creaked open just a crack, and I peered out into the dark hallway. It looked the same as before, but the shadows seemed deeper, the air colder. I stepped out and pulled the door closed behind me, feeling like I was leaving a piece of myself behind in that room. I walked quickly down the hall, the old floorboards groaning under my feet. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then came back to life. I didn't dare stop moving. The silence felt like it was pressing in on me from all sides, and I could almost feel eyes watching me from the cracks in the walls. At the end of the hallway, I found a narrow staircase that I hadn't noticed before. It led up into darkness, the steps covered in dust and what looked like old footprints. I hesitated, my mind screaming at me to leave this place and never come back. But some part of me was drawn to the stairs, pulled by a need to understand what was happening here. I started up the steps, each one creaking loudly under my weight. The air grew colder with every step, and I could see my breath in the dim light. I reached the top and found myself in another hallway, this one even darker than the first. The doors here were closed tight, and the numbers were completely gone, just dark, empty rectangles where the brass had once been. I walked slowly, shining my flashlight at each door. My ears were straining to hear something, anything, but there was only the sound of my own breathing and the soft crackle of the old building settling around me. I stopped in front of one door that looked newer than the others. The wood was clean, the handle shiny like it had been used recently. I reached out and knocked softly, not even sure why I was doing it. My knock echoed down the hallway, but no one answered. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room inside was empty, just like the one below. But in the corner, there was a small wooden box sitting on the floor. It looked out of place in the otherwise bare room. I walked over and knelt down, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The box was covered in dust, but there was something carved into the lid, a single word, listen. I swallowed hard and reached for the box. My fingers brushed against the wood, and I felt a jolt, like static electricity snapping through me. I flinched back, my heart hammering in my chest. But I couldn't walk away. I had to know what was inside. I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Inside was a small, old-fashioned recorder, the kind you see in old police interviews. It was battered and worn, but when I picked it up, I saw that the red record light was still on. My stomach twisted into a knot. I pressed play, and the tape hissed softly before a voice crackled through the tiny speaker. It was my voice, calm and steady, saying, "Hello, I'm here in apartment 3B, and I think I'm not alone." I stared at the recorder in my hand, feeling a cold shiver run down my back. My own voice played from it again, calm but with a strange echo, as if it had been recorded in a dream. "Hello, I'm here in apartment 3B, and I think I'm not alone." My fingers were trembling so badly I almost dropped it, but I couldn't look away. The recording ended with a soft click, and the silence that followed was even worse. I felt like the room was listening, like the walls were leaning in to hear what I'd do next. I put the recorder back in the box and stood up. My legs felt weak and shaky. I didn't know what was real anymore. The air around me seemed to hum, a low vibration that felt like it was coming from inside my own chest. I turned in a slow circle, my flashlight sweeping across the empty walls, half expecting to see that pale face from the mirror staring back at me. But the room was empty. Just the box, the dust, and the feeling that something was hiding just out of sight. I took a deep breath and stepped back into the hallway. The door swung shut behind me with a soft click that made my heart skip a beat. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to know what other secrets this building was keeping. I moved quickly down the hallway, the floorboards moaning under my boots. The shadows felt thicker now, closer, like they were reaching for me with cold, invisible hands. I turned a corner and saw the staircase leading down, back to the first floor. Relief washed over me at the thought of getting out, but as I took the first step down, I heard it, a faint voice, almost a whisper, saying, "Don't go." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't want to believe it was real, but I'd heard it. The same voice that had echoed through the recorder, the same hollow sound that had called me from the mirror. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I forced myself to move, taking one step at a time, faster and faster until I was almost running down the stairs. When I reached the bottom, the hallway felt different. The air was colder, and the light from my flashlight seemed dimmer, like it was being swallowed by the dark. I ran past apartment 3B, not daring to look at the door that had started all of this. My boots slipped on the dusty floor, and I had to grab the wall to keep from falling. Finally, I saw the front door of the building, its shape almost glowing in the faint light. My hand closed around the knob, and I pulled it open with a force that sent the old hinges shrieking in protest. Cold night air rushed in, wrapping around me like a blanket. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in the fresh, icy air, feeling the weight of the building lift from my shoulders. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The wind hit my face, sharp and real, and I started to feel like myself again. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if someone was standing in the window, watching me leave. I walked away from that place, my boots crunching on the gravel path that led back to the road. The building loomed behind me, silent and still, but I could feel its eyes on my back all the way down the hill. I didn't stop walking until I reached my truck. I climbed in, slamming the door shut and locking it tight. My hands were shaking as I started the engine, but I didn't care. I just needed to be gone. As I drove away, I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that pale face watching from the dark. But there was nothing. Just the empty road stretching out behind me, and the memory of the voice that had called to me from the shadows. I know I'll never go back to that building. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, when the wind sighs through the trees, I hear it still, the echo of my own voice, calm and quiet, saying, "Hello, I'm here in apartment 3B, and I think I'm not alone." And in that moment, I remember how it felt to stand in that old hallway, feeling the cold breath of something ancient and patient waiting in the dark. And I know, some doors, once opened, are never really closed.